1.
Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
It's Commander's Horn, episode 81. We begin the long voyage towards Gwent Homecoming as we play our final patch cycle with Gwent as we know it. Now, I will be spoiling the winner of Gwent Open number 5 because he's joining me on the podcast. It's AndyWand from Team Aretuza. He's here to talk about Aguara, Emote Vengeance, and taking on Tailbot on this episode of Commander's Horn. Good afternoon, friends. It is May 25th, 2018, a great time for your weekly Gwent podcast. I am Dane McBeard, and I'm a little late this week, but I can explain. I actually came home with a fever of about 38.5, had a very messed up couple of days, but I'm back, and I'm not alone. I am joined here by the champion of Gwent Open number 5, Team Aretuza's AndyWand. Andy, thanks so much for coming on the show today. Andy, did I lose you?
No, you didn't.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you for having me, first of all.
There we go.
Yeah.
No, it's my pleasure to have you. How are you? How is your ridiculously early flight home?
Oh, I'm great. Couldn't feel better. I mean, the worst part of the early flight was that I had to miss some of the party on Sunday. Yeah. So yeah, but other than that, I mean, as long as I got there, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, we were joking around like, congratulations, Andy, you won the whole thing. Here's your 5 a.m. flight. Enjoy not having any sleep at all. So what have you been up to since you got home? Have you been exploring the new patch? Have you been taking a little time off Gwent?
Yeah, a bit. Actually, both. Like the first 2 days, I took a small break. Did some real life stuff, meeting the family again, the girlfriend, stuff like that. And yeah. Now I'm actually really enjoying the new patch.
Yeah, it's
finding out what's good, what's not so good.
Yeah, we're going to get there. I actually haven't had a lot of chance to try it myself because I have been recovering from a little bit of illness, but hopefully I can live vicariously through you as you can tell me what you like.
Yeah, that's why you have me here.
Of course, yeah, we're going to talk about, well, I want to talk to you about you and your experience with Gwent Open as well. We'll be talking about the patch, we'll be talking about Gwent Open. But before we do that, I'm going to say this episode of Commander's Horn is recorded live on my channel here at twitch.tv/McBearded. You can find all episodes of Commander's Horn at commandershorn.com. And you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcasting apps. Send your emails to commandershornpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at commandershorn. And of course, this week's show is brought to you by our sponsor, the Dole Blathana Unemployment Services. If you're a war dancer or a scout hurt by this patch, we can help you build a new life. But of course, this episode is actually brought to you by our commandos. Our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Thanks as always for keeping the podcast ad-free and the mics on. And we are going to be talking to AndyWand here about Gwent Open first, and then we'll talk about the patch a little bit later. But we're going to come back in just a second here, but it'll be my pleasure to talk to Andy, winner of Gwent Open number 5, about his experience and a few other things as well right after this short break.
Okay.
All right, Andy, let's start with your debut into Gwent Pro scene was you are qualifying for Gwent Slam number 2. So what have you been up to since then? Because that was like almost at the end of the summer. Have you been practicing building, what's your role with Team Aretuza, or has it just always just kind of been working up to this point and everything went as planned?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty much trying to get better at this game for all this time. Not really doing anything else. I was grinding the pro leader seasons before that as well, but wasn't quite able to get there before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and pretty much together with Team Aretuza, we tried to build up that strength for this very moment, pretty much. Yeah, I've also been involved in some organization stuff, and yeah, building up the team as a whole. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Nothing really other than that, yeah.
That's good.
So
And then you finally got into the Gwent Open and you did the team proud and you ended up getting the capital W. But let's go chronologically here. So it starts off, I met you at Gwent Slam 2 and you said, I remember you said to me as I was leaving, I said, oh, it's so good to meet you, man. I don't know when I'll see you again. And you're like, don't worry, I'll qualify for Challenger 2. And then eventually you did actually qualify for a Challenger. It's Challenger number 4, but you kind of made good on your word. But way back then you actually beat Huan Chi, your first opponent in Gwent Open 5. Your first opponent was actually your last opponent qualifying for Gwent Slam number 2. So, how cool was it to be matched up against him for your first pro match of this year?
Oh, it was actually quite sad, I didn't want to be this guy's crusher of dreams twice.
Yeah.
That was he's a great guy. He's so nice. Unfortunately, we got matched up against each other twice now. So yeah, and both of the time he had the short end of the stick. So
it was a great series to cast, though. I remember it had some of your best Aguara plays, the spiciest plays when no one knew what was going on.
Yeah, I think it was a series I played the best. It was one of the most enjoyable ones to watch, I think, out of the tournament. I think he's a good player. I think he did almost everything he could have done. So I think overall good series. I don't know if he could have won this though, so no blame on him on this one.
It's true. A lot of times, when you have two players that are really good and you look at the lineup, you can kind of connect the dots in some situations, especially if there's heavy tech. It was a little bit subtler there, but I think that the big card that you added that really made things look great was Aguara. And when I asked you what the deal with Aguara was, you talked to me a lot about Herald, but you had a specific strategy because you were expecting Herald, even though we don't see too many Heralds, and it's because you believe that a lot of the Chinese players prefer to play Herald. Why do you think that is?
Good question. I don't know. I think it's worse. I think Vesemir, Mandrake, Runestone version, before the patch, was really good. And it's also really good in tournaments because of the prevalence of Henselt. It's kind of necessary as well, since then otherwise they just shoot your greatswords and you kind of look dumb. But I have no idea why they love it, but every time I queue against them on ladder, I see it a lot. I see it in published Chinese lists. I heard it from talking to the guys. They just rate the card, they rate the Jenge. So
that's what it is, right? It's Genji, right? But you expected to run into it. And sorry, just to be super clear to anybody who maybe just missed that in passing, I'm talking about Harold Houndsnout specifically. And if you watched Gwent Challenger, the first match with Andy versus Huan Chi, he used Aguara, first of all, to magnificently steal back a Dragoon, because it steals the elves, and it also wounded the Dragoon, it being the highest unit on his board, but also to buff the skull from Harold Houndsnout to avoid an easy triggering of the row effect on the skull. So that was your specific. So you were expecting to run into that card specifically being paired against Huan Chi or Hannah-chan in that situation.
Exactly. You might refer to Aguara as the anti-Chinese card. It's like the anti-Chinese meta card. They love muzzle. They always play they almost always play muzzle in greatswords, and they love their Herald, and it exactly performs well against those two cards. So yeah, it's you get a 2-for-1 deal on this one. And you also allow yourself to run the Royal Decree for consistency that you always get with Yavin. So I think overall the gold package I had there was perfect. Perfect for this meta game.
Yeah, it looked really good there for sure. But you didn't just go up against Huan Chi, you also went up against Vanderman. And in that matchup there, Vanderman, so in the first matchup with Vanderman and DeMarcus, Vanderman was giving DeMarcus a little grief with the emotes, a little bit of BM, and you had a chance to slam the door on him in the semifinals. Now, as a caster, I love storylines and narrative in sports, but how is it on your side to get a little bit of vengeance there for DeMarcus?
Oh, that was great. That was very necessary as well. Justice had to be restored.
That's one way of putting it.
Exactly. Yeah. He got some good amount of good luck in the series against the Marquis, and he also played really well. I don't want to take that away from him.
Yeah, he got there too. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Don't come in.
It's okay. It's cool. It's cool.
Sorry. All good. All good.
Hey, live broadcast, everybody. It's all good. My dog's probably going to bark at some point during this show, so it's totally fine.
It's fine. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that was like a nice little storyline that we saw in the Open as well. And then now, as we get into the finals match, when you go up against Tailbot, you scrim a lot with your team. You were saying that how important it is to do scrims. Actually, first of all, talk to me about scrimming with the team, because you said that you really didn't practice on the ladder. You almost practiced exclusively with your teammates. How does that work exactly? Do you just say, hey, I want to try this matchup, who has 3 hours, or is there scheduling involved? How regimented is it?
So yeah, I mean, we just have this practice group on Discord, so you can do pretty much whatever you want. Like if you just have time right at this moment, you just type in, hey guys, 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever. So you will find someone to practice. And if you want to plan ahead a bit, then you can organize a meetup for like the next day, evening, get some more people involved, you know, maybe get a chat on voice with to hear different opinions. So yeah, we had a massive lineup there on the scrimming team. Like we had Atsikov, we had Gwent Open, we had Octopuses, we had a ton of crazy good pro ladder and tournament players on there from Aretuza, and Atsikov in this case from the outside, but not anymore from the outside. So
yeah, that's right. That's actually news. That's news. Atsikov joining
news.
Team Aretuza. That happened since we last spoke, actually, and if we recorded on the schedule time, we would have missed this news, I think. So congratulations to Atsikov there.
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, I think it's good to leave both windows open, like the scheduled practice and just some spontaneous action.
For sure. So that's great. So and when I spoke to you right before the finals, you said you said 2 things. You said that you felt that the entire finals was going to rotate around greatswords, but also that you felt like it was going to come down to a weird mirror. And didn't it actually come down to the weird Scoia'tael mirror that you kind of anticipated? I'm assuming that's what you meant by weird mirror.
I mean, I meant the Scoia'tael and the greatsword, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought these were the 2 matchups that may define the series, and I actually was right this time. Losing the greatsword mirror was big. That gave Tailbot a chance, actually. Without it, it would have been super tough. But yeah, the Scoia'tael mirror, I think I was favored anyway, so I didn't feel that bad about it. Yeah.
Cool. But it was definitely something that you probably, in all your scrims and all your practices, you didn't necessarily practice the Spell-a-Tell matchup with the hand buff. So you went into that one blind.
Yeah, but you also don't need to that much. It's not the deck that you feel threatened the most by, I think, in general.
It has a lot of points to carve up with those gigantic sword masters, that's for sure. So beating Tailbot in the Open, I imagine that probably makes you feel like you have a really good chance to actually do very well in the Challenger, as you took down the latest champion of Gwent Challenger number 3. How does preparation go from here towards that Challenger?
So yeah, I mean, we just repeat history, right? We go into the scrimming again, like explore the new meta, find out what's good, find out what strategy works out the best. I'm actually gonna have a chance to test some stuff out in Czechia when I'm at the Red Dragon Championship thing.
Yeah, right.
So we gotta test the waters there a bit, I guess. That's nice. And yeah, then I mean, what can I do? It's not so much. I don't intend to play that much pro ladder anyway this season, so I can really focus on like putting even more time in. Honestly, I think since it worked out so good this time, I don't see why I should, lay back and say, well, now I'm complete. No, I think just good practice worked out first time. Good practice should pay off again.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Gwent Open in general, like how is your overall experience coming to Poland, coming to Warsaw, doing the event here, like the full here? I'm back home in Toronto, but I mean like doing the event, you know, at the studio, the 2-day event, the whole thing. How was your experience?
Oh, it was awesome. It's the best, right? I think it was, for me, it was super nice to see you guys again, the casters. I was looking forward to that, and I also promised it, so glad to keep my word there. The hotel, the city was super nice. The going out, having a drink, the food. I mean, everything is great. It's just the best week almost you can have.
And
so,
winning helps, I'm sure.
Yeah, and winning is also really nice. So yeah, I just the perfect package in 1 weekend and a bit. So yeah, it was great. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Now I have a question for you, because you're actually in a really unique situation where you've actually qualified for a tournament and you've also placed on the Pro Ladder for a tournament. So as someone who both qualified for an event through Pro Ladder and a qualifier tournament, how do you feel about the new style of Gwent Open, in which the top 6 are now going to Gwent Open, and then 2 wildcard spots will be taking place in the qualifiers in the top 100? How does that make you feel? Do you think that it's better or worse for people who want to play on Pro Ladder?
I like it. I mean, I like some of it, I should say. What I don't like about it is that it makes the top of the Pro Ladder even tighter. Kinda. It's kinda incentivizes you to stop at a certain point, so you don't necessarily have these try hard grinds last minute, the way I got there pretty much, you know. So that makes me a bit sad, but at the same time, I think it's for the majority of the population, it's better, since you can actually it actually matters even if you're not top 8. So because the Gwent Open qualifier with the top 100 and the Challenger qualifier with the top 50. So you get rewarded for, I mean, across in comparison with the whole Gwent population, top 50 or top 100 even on Pro Ladder is a great accomplishment, and you should be rewarded as you would be in a lot of other card games. So yeah, that's what I like the most about it.
Yeah.
Also,
no,
yeah. That's the good part. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think that we're going to see, and I think for like the audience, you're going to see like more new faces. You'll probably see 1 or 2 new faces almost every time, because the qualifiers, even though great players qualify very frequently, sometimes you can get very lucky or unlucky on whatever side it is, because you know, winning that many games in a row does, you know, you do need to have things go your way, so that does help. Yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to catch up with you on Gwent Open. If there's anything else you wanted to say about Gwent Open, let me know. But we can also talk about the patch as well, which is pretty big news this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it pretty much from Gwent Open, right? Everybody saw it. Everybody knows what happened.
It's true. Yeah.
Just maybe one thing more about the new system with the qualifiers. Just to let you know that I'm not on even though I qualified through a qualifier once. I'm not on the side of the argument that like Pro Ladder is about the grind and it's easier to get there if you put more hours than you would than the skill, quote unquote, you would need to qualify for through one of these qualifiers, right? Through one of these tournaments. I think, and since I've done it both, I think top 8 is harder than winning a qualifier. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's one way to put it, because yeah, I mean, it seems very difficult. Pro Ladder, it just seems like it just requires the amount of playing to get back when you lose peak and stuff like that, and also like when, you know, end of season when people are playing like some very specific things, and you don't have as much freedom to play the way you want to play at the end, and it can actually cost you placements. Like it sounds like a crazy grind, and
it's also a personality test. Like you have to avoid the tilt, and you have to have the resilience. The best thing you can do is become a robot like Tailbot. Turn off your emotions, play the games,
just become winning.
Become the winning machine. Yeah, exactly.
All
That's
right.
how you do best. That's why he's top one on pro ladder because he's the best player in the game.
Because
Exactly, that's
he
yeah.
there's not an ounce of his body energy that isn't put towards Gwent. Everything else is very he turns it
But
on
I
gold.
don't, I don't. So yeah,
Nah,
but yeah.
he's no. We hang out with Tailbot. He's a good guy. He's not quite as his persona might reflect, but just he's making us all laugh. I think he's making us all laugh. Hopefully, he's making you laugh as well. All right, let's talk about this patch though, because this patch is pretty big. So we're gonna take the shortest break here and just gonna talk about. We're gonna do a roundup. 11 changes came to us May 22nd on Tuesday, and this is the swap patch, the final patch, the patch to end all patches before homecoming. So I think these changes are subtle, but I think that they're very targeted. So we'll get to that in just a moment with AndyWand right after this. I thought I muted my mic, but I coughed a little bit, and you may have heard it, my friends. I do apologize. All right, so on May 22nd, we received the final balancing patch, a much-anticipated patch that is small in stature but targets a number of popular decks and cards, specifically Create Mechanics, which is a much frowned-at mechanic introduced in the Midwinter update. So these changes were, it wasn't a huge amount of changes, but they were very, very specific. And let's go through them. There was 11 of them, Andy. And I remember the full notes came in. The video was being released. I was in line with Nejvik and Demorcus at the Warsaw airport, and we're watching the video and going through everything, just kind of afterwards having lunch. But some of the changes seem pretty fair. Let's start off with Black Blood. Black Blood has been changed to only create a bronze necrophage or vampire and boost it by 2. And also the original effect of destroying a bronze or silver necrophage or vampire. So no longer can it create a silver necrophage or vampire. No longer can it create a Baya or Necroat for quick weather solutions or huge row damage in this case of Necroat. Generally, though, Andy, how do you feel about this change? Because it doesn't seem so bad. It seems like it's less about having answers, but now it seems more like a value card.
No, this change is great. Like this is the best change of them all. Like of course there are changes that are more impactful than this one, but I think from like design, this change is exactly what I wanted for Black Blood, because it's like it's a fair card now. Funnily, you know, you get the 13-point Ekimara, which is fair, and it's like it feels like a slightly worse monsterness now, but it's neutral and it's also its alchemy, so that's totally fair, I think. And it doesn't create these normally tech choices that sometimes in certain situations win you games, like the ones you mentioned, Abaya, Nekurat, Ozreal as well.
Yeah, right.
Against stuff like Olgierd in the past, which is of course not the thing anyway, but I think there were a few things that just felt really bad about the card, and none of it is left. You pretty much have a controlled RNG, which you can weigh the odds if you want to play it later in the round, so you get the more powerful ghoul, or if you just want to like bleed a card or just play the Ekimara drawn or whatever you have, you know. So I love it. I think it's the best. It's amazing. Really good change.
Yeah, it's good. And I think Alchemy definitely still has a home for it. And, you know, they definitely need it because Runestones were also changed. Actually, I'll go to Runestones. So now Runestones also changed for Create. Their Create pool now includes bronzes from the factions that they represent as well. So you're basically getting any card that isn't gold from the Runestone. And it's still Create, but with the bronze pool, people were looking at it maybe like, oh, it's kind of like how Avalok the Sage isn't competitively good because he has a chance of pulling a bronze card, but it is Create. And I've heard some reports that it's still like decent. How do you feel about it, Andy?
I think different runestones are more are hurt more or less by this change. Like I think the Nilfgaard runestone, for example, is not horrible because of this. But for example, the Skellige runestone, like Skellige has a lot of weird bronze cards, like and or situational bronze cards like Freya or Queen's Guard, stuff like that, like bad or situational bronze cards, armor smith. So yeah, the Skellige one got worse by a lot, and I also think the Nilfgaard one got worse by a good amount. So I think none of them are probably playable anymore, but there are some that are less horrible.
That's one way of putting it. I actually think well, I guess in some ways you can consider the monster one actually improving because the Crones kind of diluted how good that card could be in the first place. But monster cards are so synergy based in general, it's probably not even good for monsters.
It's the worst.
It's still the worst one.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still pretty bad. So alchemy shifting probably back to expired ale, or do you think that I haven't really had a chance to? I'll be honest, guys, I've been sick. I haven't had a chance to jump on the ladder. But are people trying to make alchemy work? Are they still even trying the runestone, or is it black blood expired ale now? Do you think?
I mean, it's definitely Mandrake, and I've seen some expired ale, but you don't have to run it. You can run 2 swallows since slave drivers are now gone, or like a swallow and a mardrum. Like I've seen different stuff, but I think the day one consensus is that expired ale is still not really worth it. It depends. If you run Rainfine, you can consider it, but since you need more proactive silver and possibly gold cards, like a lot of people went for a Guardian in the silver slot.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, or you can do different stuff as well. But I've seen fun combos like how is it called, the 1 point get a soldier dude with Nilfgaardian Knife. I've seen that.
Recruit.
Yeah, the recruit, like
because then you get the 2 bodies, right? It's kind of the same as slave driver.
It's like better slave driver, but it's riskier and it costs more slots. So yeah, but it's definitely not bad. Like there are a lot of different things you can do, and I'm really happy that it's not this slave driver fiesta anymore. You know, alchemy has like a lot of different ways now. You can you got a lot. Like they removed a card, but you have more options now. That's because when I first looked at the patch notes, I was a bit sad that they killed a lot of cards, or at least it looked like Gwent already has not a lot of options when it comes to a lot of classes, and they removed cards by making them terrible. But in the case of Slave Driver, for example, it actually empowered the archetype for more options. So I love that. It's really good.
Yeah, Slave Driver was never put in because it was like a must-have card for alchemy. It was just one of the best. It gave you the 2 bodies for the ale, and it generally gave you high value. And it was never like the heart and soul of alchemy has always been Viper Witcher and the actual alchemy spells. So, and the novices. So I think that I think it's great that they basically take that option away, you know, with the nerfing kind of killing the card, but just making the card different, I think, in the case of Slave Driver, maybe specifically. But we'll get to Slave Driver. But I do think, I think that I want to explore alchemy a lot now that slave drivers aren't in there, because they were, man, I got annoyed by slave driver a lot. So
it's a lot of fun now, definitely.
It's a lot of fun. Cool,
yeah. I like it. I didn't like the deck before, but now I really like it.
Oh, that's good, because I also wasn't a huge fan. I was playing mill alchemy just to make it more fun for myself, but now this will be much more interesting because that bronze slot being open. So speaking of bronze units, Doppler was also changed. Now it's no longer a create option. It just gives you a unit. Unplayable, right? This one can't be saved, right? This was any followers of Hearthstone, this was Warsong Commandered into oblivion. I think no one's going to play this card anymore. Olgierd, though, this is an interesting one. Olgierd von Everec is now a 5-power silver card with a Death Wish. Resurrect this unit on a random row. Now, there was a bug fix, and I'm not sure if the bug was the fix in the tooltip or the bug was actually fixed in his behavior, but he wasn't coming back on a random row. It was the tooltip, so he comes back on the same row.
Exactly. So it's actually a nice run combo now. Yeah, like you can play the Olgierd, then you play the run, and the run keeps eating the Olgierd. Yeah. If nothing happens. Yeah, I think.
Bran can keep eating Olgierd. Cyclops can keep throwing Olgierd. Your Barbagazi can eat Olgierd, and you get the 11-point carryover and Olgierd back. So there are lots of things you can do with Olgierd, but he's kind of slow. So getting Olgierd out, there's probably a deck that can maybe marching orders him, and I'm going to give that a try, I think, when I stream over the next couple of days. But he seems interesting, and like the idea of like mandraking him or adrenaline rushing him and just doing, you know, the real kind of Imlerith Sabbath scumbag package of just like really abusing this card here. But there's an interesting bug, I think, that's happening right now, that if Olgierd is reduced to 3 or 2 strength and he lands in like a pit trap or blood moon, that he keeps on coming back like infinitely. So hopefully he dies and keeps coming back because he doesn't come back on a random row. So I'm actually interested in, I hope that gets dealt with somehow, like they put a limit or they put some sort of special interaction with blood moon, because that looks like, I don't want to run into that when I'm streaming, because what do? You can't quit the game either. You got to be careful, everybody out there.
Ooh, that sucks. Yeah, but I think the card is cool.
Yeah.
It's not bad either. Like it misses the tutor right now, and marching orders is cute, but it also then you can't run Slicers anymore, and that's like the whole It's like a very key card in both consume and maybe something like a tempo consume, where this might find a home. I think it's really good in that sort of deck, but you can tutor it really out, and it doesn't really get countered or anything by Mandrake. It's already good against your deck. It doesn't matter if it happens, right?
Yeah, I mean he's hard to tutor out. You can't in case I'm sure everybody listening, you know, you can't use like Sheetroll, you can't use Marloran that doesn't target silvers, so he is really hard to find at 5 strength. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody can make him work, or if he ends up just suffering kind of like Operator, where it's like an interesting card, but at 5 power, it's really hard to play. So we'll have to see. The winch change. Now this one is maybe the only one that I'm not a huge fan of this one. Winch no longer creates a machine. It instead boosts all the machines on your board by 3. It's still a tactic. It's still a special card, but it doesn't actually create a unit. Me personally, I feel like they could have attacked Henselt's ability, limited it to pulling out 2 things, and maybe left Winch the way it is, because I felt like the variance in Winch wasn't so wild. But I don't know. How do you feel about this change in general? And do you see any application for this card?
I don't see application for this card, but I agree with you, I think. Yeah. They could have tackled the Henselt. Henselt may become a problem again with these kind of cards, and also like shuffling back mechanics like Neneki. But yeah, I mean, this is we want to kill Henselt and change.
Yeah.
And I think they succeeded as well. This card is horrible, obviously. Yeah, I don't know. I think the card was fine. I mean, it was really, really problematic with Henselt.
Yeah.
But yeah, the variants. I mean, I want to say that I don't really mind that the card is not a thing anymore, but there was probably a more elegant way. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when because Henselt's always been there for Northern Realms, and back when like Reaver Hunters were a thing, I remember when they just obliterated Reaver Hunters. I was so happy because I couldn't stand seeing it anymore. So I understand how that can kind of come in when you see a card so many times, and it is a relatively unpredictable card as well. So you never really know. You can also, like, the way people were building their Henselt, so some people were putting reinforced ballistas in, some people were putting standard ballistas in, some people were even putting siege towers in, like Freddy was in Challenger 3, and then Winch would just give you a card, and you really couldn't put your opponent on anything, especially if you're seeing the deck for the first time. So it gave you a little bit extra mystery. So I can see how that was, like, just competitively, really, really, the play rate on this card was so high, and Henselt so high.
I mean, the Winch Henselt interaction, no matter what happens, one side always feels terrible.
Yeah.
Like, either you whiff a bunch of winches and you never get the machine you wanted to, like I actually did in the Open as well, right? Against the Phenomen's Consume.
You were trying to find the reinforced ballista so badly.
Exactly. Yeah, and I didn't find it, so that feels bad for me in this case. Or if it actually happens and he gets the 3 machine hands without like a lot of setup at all, it's also really, really unfair, and it also exaggerates the coin flip. It's horrible. It's the worst. Okay, I'm glad it's gone.
Cool, glad it's gone. All right, so I mean, for the most part, you've made me actually feel better about it as well. I still think maybe Henselt could have solved the problem, but now Winch not also being a thing is also important as well. Dunbanner also gets hit. Your sirs. are now have a threshold of 25, more than 25, so that's clear. It actually has to be 26. So that's a lot of points to be ahead in that situation. This card, I feel like was already, people were kind of losing the flavor on this card a little bit. Even in Challenger, we saw Tailbot drop it. He added it back for Open. But Dunbanner with a threshold of 25, I personally didn't like playing Dunbanner. I was more of like in the camp of Northern Realms players that prefer to play Dijkstra and no Dunbanner. So the fact that Dunbanner is gone now, I feel good about it. I know a lot of people absolutely despise this card. How do you feel about Dunbanner finally getting nerfed?
I couldn't be happier about this one. Like I was always playing Dunbanners and Henselt, and I still think like if they were 20, or the way they were before, it was really good to play them. Like there are so many matchups, like against Alchemy, or against Great Swords, where they were kind of like your win condition, and Ballistas don't do anything for you. But like getting that banners out like on red coin, and then in round 3 you shuffle them back with the Neki nonsense like that, 22 points silver and 12 points for free. What the hell is this? This is busted. This is insane. Really strong. Now it's totally horrible. Of course, it's the worst. Nobody's gonna break 25. I mean, you can. I actually, first game, I shouldn't say that, because first game after the patch, I ran into these guys and somebody pulled it off against me. I wasn't expecting them. I thought, no way this guy plays Dunbanners, but yeah, I got punished there. Yeah, I'm glad they are gone. I think it's also like fair now. I mean, for such an insane ability, they should be like super weird. They should be super hard to pull off. It should be like you should have a strategy that really devolves around, you know, I'm gonna fall back and then the Dunbanners come out. Not like I play this fight, the Dunbanners come out and nothing happens. Draw a card for 0 points. Come on, I mean, right?
Yeah, it's better this way. Do you think the 25 was too much though, or do you think that this is just fine? Just let's move on to a different world without Dunbanners being so prevalent.
I don't know, man. I mean, you could have done like 24, 23 maybe. But I mean, with 22, I would have already been scared that it's not enough, you know? So I don't mind 25. It's okay. I mean, do you really want a world where this card is competitively viable?
I think we're tired of that world.
Yeah, and if you do, then you may want to ask yourself what happened. Why is this the world you want to live in?
Why are you like this? Who hurt you?
You should reconsider your life choices if you like this card. Like everybody hates this, right? Come on.
It's a really popular opinion. All right, Elven Scout. Big change to Elven Scout. No longer creates a bronze Scoia'tael unit from outside of your starting deck. Now is simply a 10 power card that swaps a card. So very much like a Riot Officer, only a base strength of 10, and it swaps a card, and that's all it does. So at first glance for this card, I was very unimpressed with this card. I'm like, it's just kind of like very samey. But then I realized maybe there's something to Scoia'tael, giving Scoia'tael that many extra swaps. Does this make Vanguards better? Does it make Alias better? Even if it's not competitive, does it actually at least encourage thoughtful deck building, unlike something like Roach Merciless, where it's like there's no thought? So is there something there? So I've tried a little. That's like the only thing I've done today is try a little bit with Elven Scout, and I'll be playing a little bit later, I think. But this card is different but not dead is kind of where I'm standing on it. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about it. I know that it's definitely in an probably a very off-meta archetype, or a very maybe tier 3, tier 2. But is there a way, do you think this actually can empower a swap-based mechanic to be worthwhile to play?
I think Elven Scout is not out of the equation, yeah. I think it's not that bad. I mean, it's definitely not amazing, if you get what I'm saying. It's not, if you were to play a deck with like the swap thingies, Elven Scout is one of the weaker cards in the deck. But it's not like you have a billion other options, and it has some cute things you can do. You know, like if it highly supports playing Yorveth now, for example, in the deck. Like you can have the War Dancers and the Scouts in the opening hand, play the Yorveth, and then you get the 14-point the 15-point play actually, right? 15-point play with the thinning, and that's pretty powerful if you ask me. It's never disgustingly bad like a Vanguard or a War Dancer from hand like in the past, right? So I don't think this card is dead. I also don't think like Scoia'tael is at the top of the game right now.
Yeah, right.
But since at least for Proleta, like you have to consider the weaker factions as well. I don't think this card is out. I think this may be one of the stronger Scoia'tael archetypes. So the swapping thing, because I don't really rate like the Eithne compression nonsense as well, because it's like inconsistent in the matchup roulette. So yeah, I think something like this, pretty consistent. I don't think at first I didn't like the change as well, but I think I'm happy with this actually.
So I run a deck that that I play pretty often. It's kind of like a meme deck, but it's a deck that I like. It's a Siri Dash Mulligan list where I have Geralt, I have vanilla Geralt and Siri Dash in the list, and the end of the game it thins so well that I have nothing but officers and gigantic units to swap. So I'm playing like 20-point officer, 20-point officer, and then I can, and now I'm playing it with Ethna, so I can marching orders out Elias or maybe like the last scout, but usually I can swap it so Elias is the thing that comes out on marching orders. And the deck before in that slot ran Neophytes because I just needed another bronze card to play that had a high strength total for swapping, so I could play one officer and maybe res that officer with a buffed Hattori. But now the Elven Scout does all that work for me, and it's the 10 power card that also swaps. It actually makes that deck, if anybody who's listening to the podcast knows my Mulligan Dash list, that this list is better now, and I'm going to have a great time playing it. And also, speaking of swap, War Dancer as well now only activates on the in-game swap, not during Mulligan. So you can only get it out if you use a card like Elven Scout or Riot Officer or Saskia. That's the only way you're going to see that card. It's not going to come out on Mulligan. This obviously hurts the card greatly, as its biggest case was to block an open pass. And yeah, I mean, this changes the card a lot. What you were saying about Yorveth does make a point that Scoia'tael has a lot of access to boosting cards in hand. So while even I agree, Ojot's in the chat as well as saying War Dancer could have been buffed in this situation, there are a lot of ways to buff the War Dancer before it hits the board. So I think there might be a specific deck that uses this, but I think that every Scoia'tael deck using that's just not going to happen anymore. How do you feel about it, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It could have been 4 maybe, but at the same time, you have to consider that like buffing this card by a point is really big. Like if it's 5, then that's already kind of auto include with the Elven Scouts. Then it has strong elf synergy. It could have been 4 maybe. I'm not sure. I hope they did the testing on this one. It's not dead anyway. I thought it's dead. It's definitely, but that's just tells you how insane War Dancer was.
Yeah,
like
right.
It literally got nerfed to the ground. It is like 100 times worse now, and it's okay, you know.
Well, that was the spirit of the card in the first place. It was kind of always meant to kind of be like this, probably when it was put into the game, but it was only being used at the beginning of rounds.
I mean, with Officer, it's not good enough at 3. No way. It just has an 11. That's not good enough. But with Scout, I mean, it's okay. It's not bad.
Yeah. And finally, one of the things that was there is also the one change about Vrayed Vanguard is that it also only works during round. But since you're not likely to have elves on the board during your Mulligan phase anyway. Now that War Dancers are gone, it's kind of nerfed along with War Dancers. But the triggering ability,
nothing happened, right?
Yeah, kind of nothing really happened to Vrayed Vanguard. Not working any differently. There's my dog. I knew it was going to happen eventually. But the last thing, Scoia'tael just kept getting hit. Brewer no longer pulling spying units means you can't rely on Brewer getting Yavin out for you. You need to have Yavin in hand and pull a Cleaver to get the same sort of effect. This feels like kind of a subtle change. I feel like they could have really nerfed harder when you're looking at stuff like Winch and you're looking at stuff like Dun Banner. But this feels like Brewer is fairly playable from a lot of aspects. It's just he's not going to necessarily carry the faction anymore. How do you feel about it?
It's a really hard hit, though.
It's hard
like
hit.
This is a punch. This is a hard one. Like, Brewer incentivized to play a bunch of silver unit cards, so no spells, and this, like, you had a really nice consistency with the deck because you needed like either the Yavin or the Barclay, and then you're golden, right? Because Brewer pulls the other one. So you can pretty much have access to both of them, which are like the silvers you definitely want every game, other than like Ida, Hattori, blah blah blah. The other ones, you kind of get them later, or you only want them in certain matchups, or you only need them in certain matchups. So this I only need to have 50% of the combo thing was really big, I think. And now, if you want to have a reliable spy, you have to go like ADC, maybe the Isengrim Outlaw guy to pull it, and that's counterintuitive with the Brewer a bit to some extent. So I think we will see a lot less Brewer. Like maybe I was trying some Aithne, Isis Double Cross, Marching Orders, maybe Scorch, something like that, and then just only Barclay, Cleaver, and Yavin. So you can you have only the really necessary silvers, and then the tutors for them, and you don't need Brewer for that anymore. It's like build your own Brewer.
It's true, yeah. No, you make a really good point that that less units means Brewer's kind of less good at what he's supposed to be doing. So
exactly, yeah. So I'm not sure about the Brewer. If it's not unplayable, but at the same time, like, it kind of feels bad. It's only 4 points. I think he could have been buffed to like 5 at least. Easily, actually. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess time will tell on this one, because Brewer's always had a very powerful effect, especially when they added more and more silvers to the game that made him better and better. Ethna was kind of like the best Scoia'tael leader for a really long time as well. Now, I feel like a lot of the times where we're saying like it's not bad, it's not unplayable, it's not terrible, it's worse, it feels bad, it's almost like maybe it's being balanced. I feel like we're not so clearly we're trash. I mean, Dun Banners I think are hit pretty hard, I think, and Winch obviously is like devastating to what Hensel was able to do. But I think that a lot of these changes were like the Elven Scout change definitely had War Dancer in mind. The idea that they're like a unit now, very similar to Alchemist, Darlin, Foot Soldier. It's going to be very similar type of interaction. So that seems like it's an okay combo, and I think people still play those. So we'll see, I think. But yeah, the last card is Slave Driver, and we kind of already talked about Slave Driver. But just kind of applications of Slave Driver, I guess. How would you use this new card? Slave Driver no longer is a 1-power bronze unit that creates a unit from your opponent's starting deck, bronze unit. It is now a 10-power unit that sets an ally's power to 1 and deals damage to an enemy by the amount of power lost. So this is a very, very different card, but it's got some interesting interaction with stuff like Decoy or Emmy or a Mandrake, or even setting up a better Village of Forts, or makes your, if you want to keep going one of Marjoram, you can find better value. If you have nothing else to play it on, you could heal a unit back up. I haven't had a chance to really test it yet, but what kind of deck would make use of this? It's an officer, it's not a soldier, so it's gonna have to have a combo in there somewhere with some sort of high power unit. But it feels kind of just like Nilfgaard Cyclops. It's gonna look for a home somehow. Maybe find it in soldiers, perhaps.
I don't think so.
No,
I think this is like a bad card. Yeah, this is a bit like Cyclops, but Cyclops is good, right? Cyclops is one of the better cards in Death Wish, because it comes out at 11, and which is not bad. It gives you the removal option, and it also triggers like synergize with the other cards. Like what the Slave Driver gonna synergize with, like. It's only really there for like cute stuff, as I would call it. Like you can go full cute and go with Kahia and like buff your Calvit to, I don't know what. Like you can Calvit do the Slave Driver, Mandrake it to the Slave Driver, Madrum it to the Slave Driver, Madrum it, and I mean, but it doesn't really change anything, does it? Like the synergy is there, and you gain some extra points. But in the end, this whole combo thing is, first of all, not going to work a lot, since people like to kill your Calvit anyway. And second of all, it if you're doing only Mandromes and Mandrakes, you're kind of going on the I'm going 2 cards down or I'm going to lose the round on even path anyway. So you might as well don't care about points. The other way, I mean, maybe you can go like Viper Witcher, Slave Driver, I'm going to remove everything the opponent plays. But that's not really how Gwent works, I think.
I mean, it's an interesting card. Again, it provokes thought in deck building, and maybe there's somebody who might make a spicy meme that gets popularity. I know there's lots of people that are probably investigating each and every one of these changes. I mean, Olgierd, there's a lot of these cards feel like brand new cards, Slave Driver and Olgierd specifically. So maybe you're checking it out. Maybe maybe you in the chat, the audience, are checking out these new cards. But again, there are only these 11 changes, one of which is the Vride Vanguard, so it doesn't even feel like a real change. It's really just 10 changes. So a very small patch by Gwent standards, but of course we are going into Homecoming, and the game feels more or less the same. It's just some of the big players got taken down by these nerfs. So that's cool. Thanks for analyzing that with me, Andy. We're going to wrap this up as well. I know you have things to get to, but we're going to take, how about two or three questions from the chat. Let us know if you have any questions for AndyWand about Challenger, about his opinions on the patch, any questions for me, any questions for both of us. Let us know in the chat. Tag me at McBearded, and of course we will be back to check that out in the chat in just a second. I see there's some questions already coming in. Talk to you soon. Once again, we are supported by our commandos. Our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. We'd like to welcome our newest commandos, Leonardo L. and Sean L. Thanks so much for supporting the content and keeping the podcast ad-free. I have some questions in the chat. Crushy92 asking, what's a replacement for Slave Driver and Alchemy? You may want to just check the beginning of the podcast where we actually talk about that or the beginning of the strategy section, we actually cover that. So check that out. What's going on? Good luck at the Challenger, Andy. Ojat saying that he'll be rooting for you. David Rodriguez asking if we have any opinions on yesterday's leaks, probably referring to Berja appearing on the Top Deck Talk Show. Here's the truth is, guys, I was so out of it. I haven't watched it yet. Andy, did you get a chance to watch Berja on the talk show?
No, I didn't.
Oh, so we don't even know what these leaks are. It's terrible for gaming journalism right now. It's at the low point right now. David, throw a juicy leak in the chat here, and we'll give you a hot take on it for sure. But of course, if anybody else, Molegion is saying, play Nausicaa Brigade, hit it with Slave Driver, play Marjoram Mandrake on Nausicaa, repeat 4 times, shuffle it back for thick finisher. Poggers. That's good. That's good stuff. Molegion, one of your teammates on Aretuza, is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Yeah, this combo is really, really funny.
I gotta try that for sure. I only lurk the Aretuza Discord. I barely chat. I should change that for sure, guys. Play one more Dancer, buff it to enormous size, mulligan with Elven Scout in the last round. Yeah, that's the idea. Just play one. Just play one. David Rodriguez Jr., let us know. Okay, so Beardy Bog in the chat, do you think Henselt will reappear at some point? Personally, I think if you were to take out Den Banners and add a different machine in there and just have more machine options, I think that Henselt's probably still strong. I just think that the competitive dominance is lower, but I think it's still possible that he might still be one of the best Northern Realms decks to pick. Andy, if you disagree, what do you think might actually rise in popularity for Northern Realms?
Nothing. Northern Realms is dead.
You think Northern Realms is not going to be played?
RIP. Yes, I think so. I think Northern Realms is pretty dead. I mean, Henselt might come back, but only if there is much later, right? If there has to be a bronze card that is really good if you pull only 2, and there is none right now. Like, machines are bad, and the curse thingies you can get are also pretty bad. I mean, you might try as well at this point. You might try the guys that get boosted. How are they called? The guys that get boosted when you get them out of the deck.
Yeah, the Kidwani Knights. Yeah.
Yeah, the Kidwani Knights. This seems like the most reliable and like the Henselt for the best points. But then again, like, what do you stick that package in? I don't know. I mean, maybe you'll find out, but I think Northern Realms in a pretty bad spot.
So you think that from here on in competitive Northern Realms, it's going to be the faction that is not picked, and it's going to be Scoia'tael, Nilfgaard, Skellige monsters for everybody?
Yes.
All right, you heard it here. We'll have to see. I mean, it'll be weird not casting Hensel, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff I don't miss about those games either. David Rodriguez Jr. is saying that there is some of the stuff that came in. I think the main thing is, it looks like they're changing the game in a lot of ways. 2 rows, row limits are going to be still in. Deck building costs, spy removal. You know what? This probably isn't good to do live right now to check it out, but the news is that Palabergia was on the final episode of the Top Deck Talk Show. It was on Swim's channel yesterday around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I believe. So you may want to check out that stuff there. Last question here from Timbo. Since Bergia has confirmed that they're working towards 2 lanes instead of 3, do you think this will be a good or bad thing for future Gwent? I think it's going to be relative to all the other changes. I think that if there's 2 rows that mean something and the game is kind of tailored around that and changes accordingly, I think that the game should feel the same. If they're still planning on making they're going to have to obviously change some interactions, but I think that spiritually the game should feel the same. And if there's going to be different row interactions, it should make each turn much more exciting if every card is affected that way. Andy, how do you feel about potentially kind of losing the Gwent that we know with 3 rows?
Oh, I don't mind. I think at first glance it sounds good. 2 rows, like 2 rows that matter are better than 3 rows that don't matter. That's like my stance on it.
Yeah, I've heard that exact quote actually. It's a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, I think that it's accurate. I think it's really hard to give complexity and meaning to 3 rows. But if you can engineer like a 2-row system where you have like a choose one mechanic pretty much for cards, that sounds great to me. I mean, of course, like I saw a lot of people talking about, oh my god, Lazarate's going to be broken, Weather's going to be broken, Igni's going to be broken. I mean, they cannot introduce the change with leaving those as they are. So I trust them on not being dumb and doing that. So yeah.
Well, Weather could be better. If Weather doesn't change very much, Weather's definitely better in that situation.
Yes.
It's an interesting thing.
Clears might be better. Who knows?
Clears would be better in that case. And then everything's balanced, right? I mean, I do like the idea. Right. Yeah, I like the idea that every card or many, many cards are like, this card does this in the siege row or the ranged row, whatever it ends up being called. And then the melee row, it does something different. Or it has a disadvantage. I don't know. I'd like it to be 2 different options, maybe not better in certain rows, but lots of stuff we can do. Andy, I know you've got to get going. I'm going to wrap this up here. It was awesome talking to you, my friend. Thanks so much for making the time and for rescheduling around my fragile human body traveling back across the ocean. Andy, you stream or you work with Team Aretuza, and of course, you're out there doing your thing in the competitive scene. Where can people find you if they want to follow you online?
I mean, mainly on my Twitter. I would recommend that. I'm quite active. I mean, there's not a lot of content coming from me, but if you just want to read what I'm writing on Twitter, then you can go for @TA. How's it called? Like the AndyWand. I mean, you'll underscore. Yeah, you'll find it. And yeah, I also recommend joining the public Discord on Team Aretuza and checking out the website. Team Aretuza. That's pretty much. It's not from me exclusively, but I think that's the content you should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, like Atsakov just joined Team Aretuza, and a lot of great players play for and on and in collaboration with Team Aretuza. So if you have a competitive mind and you want to get involved in the conversation, I highly recommend their Discord. The link, if you're watching this live, there is no links or anything like that, but if you're watching this on YouTube right now or listening on the podcast, in the show notes, you will find a link to that Discord and, of course, to Andy's Twitter as well. You can find me at McBeardCH on Twitter, McBearded on Twitch where you're watching this live, and McBeard on YouTube where this will be uploaded in the future. You can also find the podcast on Twitter at Commander's Horn, and you can email us at commandershorn.com. Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks to everybody in the chat for joining us for this live edition of Commander's Horn. And we got it done this week. Thanks again, Andy. Thanks for your time.
Oh, thanks. That was awesome. Great fun. Okay.
Yeah, but for me and for Andy, this will be it. Thanks so much for joining us. For Andy, this is McBeard. Best of luck. Best of luck on the path.
Thanks, and enjoy your stream. And guys in chat, enjoy the stream as well. I might stick around anyway. So.